Tuesday, May 25th to order. And we do have an amended agenda that had gone out later Thursday. Is that correct, Steve?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
So we'll be operating off of the amended agenda. So the first item is the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Evinger, second by Commissioner Gross. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next is citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard on items not on the agenda? Any citizens to be heard? Steve, any online?
We have none, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the approval of bills and vouchers.
Move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Mojo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Approval of minutes from May 11th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Evinger, second by Commissioner Kaylee. Any further discussion? Huh? Commissioner Gross. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. That's what I thought I said. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, our next item is resource recovery update. Good morning, Kirk. And for the record, we'll have introductions of our folks from Construction Engineers.
Sure. Lance Munson, Pre-Construction Manager, Construction Engineers.
Ben Matson, Senior Project Manager for Construction Engineers.
Okay, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I come before you today. It's been quite a drastic increase in the price of materials here over the year. And so what we're coming to you with today is asking for approval of a guaranteed maximum price for specific materials within the project. The project is, as we've talked about, these are areas that we've come before you with today that are particularly sensitive to increases. Some of the increases have been as much as 5% per week. So we're hoping that by locking into the bid on these particular items now, that will help us as we move on down in the process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lance, who's going to walk through this. If you have any questions, obviously, please feel free to interrupt, and we'll do the best we can to answer.
Sure, thanks. As stated, we're looking for approval for bid pack 1. We've identified the items that are most critical to get started to make sure that materials can get ordered and the project can get underway. So I believe you guys have in front of you the bid pack 1 document for a total of just over 14.7 million. It includes some of the general conditions items, earthwork, building concrete, the pre-engineered metal building, mechanical, electrical, paving, and utilities.
Ben, good morning.
Morning. Yeah, so just to kind of piggyback on that, so we had documents put together by Burns and McDonald here about a month ago. We put it out to bid, received bids in our office on last Wednesday, the 19th, I think it was. We've reviewed those. We're comfortable with these numbers, and we would ask today, the ask is for approval of bid pack 1 in the amount of $14,704,719, should you so choose.
Maybe I can point out that Commissioner Mojo and I had an opportunity to meet with these folks yesterday afternoon, along with Steve, and obviously we share the concern on where this price tag has gone from when we started. I think when we looked at the grant that we got from the state of Minnesota, at that point in time, we were probably looking at an all-in cost of around $14 million. As what's being proposed today are the critical components that we're concerned about that are escalating sometimes on a daily basis. with that in mind, we're also have scheduled for a finance meeting on Thursday morning after our SWAC meeting to kind of go over the complete plans on how we'd pay for all this. But what we did come up with yesterday was, based on the current numbers that are proposed, we still believe that we were going to be able to fit that in within our service fee that we have for capital. We'd be, right now, we collect about $1.3 million annually for that service fee. And right now, with the proposal as it is today, the bond payment with that, as well as the, all of the equipment that would be necessary, along with the Prairie Lake Solid Waste annual fee, all of those things would fall, we would end up at about 1.321, I think it was the number, it's just slightly over. So we'd probably end up looking at a very slight increase in our service fee on, that goes on the property tax statement. That's different than the tipping fee. So looks very, very doable from a finance standpoint. We still have some concerns on the overall project, and that's why we did not recommend bringing the full amount forward today, but we felt it was critical to bring these items forward. Obviously, we're still working on the operations piece of what the transfer station and the landfill will look like, and those expenses all fall under what would be considered the tipping fee portion. So there will more than likely be an adjustment to that tipping fee to cover operations, but I don't foresee that to be. And by the way, this plan does call for $3.5 million of cash out of our solid waste fund to help bring down the amount that we'd have to bond. So, I don't know if Commissioner Mojo, if you have anything to add to that meeting, but I think it started off a little bit frustrating, but as we put the numbers to paper, and by the way, what we did do to make this work is there were some plans in place originally that was around a $535,000 a year payment that we had incorporated into a long-term plan for future landfill cell expansion, which isn't for another maybe 8 years out. And so we felt that could be pulled out, and when that time comes, if needed, then a new bond could go for that. It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of unfair to make everybody pay for this now, plus a future landfill expansion that's that far out. So we did have to do that in order to make this work, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to still fit this in with close to where we are already on what we collect, so. So I'd open it up to, oh yeah, Commissioner Mojo.
Yeah, I would just want to say that I agree with what Commissioner Campbell has said too. I think it's noted that Councilmember Hendrickson from the city of Moorhead is on this, or here today, and it's really is a joint project with the city of Moorhead that we'd advocated fiercely to get the grant money from the state that we did. Obviously, there's a significant amount of volatility in the market, but I think we were able to pare this down to something, as you say, the critical components, and then hopefully it buys us a little more time to deal with the other aspects of it to kind of deal with the spikes in the cost. But I certainly support this and appreciate the flexibility of staff and construction engineers to create 2 different bid packs so that we can process this.
I know on the agenda, we did not necessarily have on there that we were going to approve any GMP, but I just think it's critical that we, when you were talking, Ben and Lance yesterday, you were talking about sometimes it's hard to even get a commitment 2 days out in terms of guaranteed prices. So I think it's pretty important that we act on this if we want to keep this from even escalating more. So, Unless, does the board have any questions on?
I should point out, Mr. Chairman, that I've been really, really impressed with the cooperation between construction engineer and Burns and McDonald. They did an awful lot of value engineering to keep the cost down on this project. So I really thank you to both of you guys.
And I do want to point out that I think our intent here was on this bid package one, getting that today, and it's, the rest of it, we're not anticipating that being delayed a great deal. I know I will be gone next week again for my second eye surgery, but then after that, we'll be back here, and I'm thinking even in the next 2 weeks, we could probably come back with the remainder once we have our finance meeting on Thursday morning, and we can go through this a little bit more, but, so I think hopefully within 2 to 3 weeks, we could probably follow up with the remainder of the project and have it a total gross maximum price established. Yes, Commissioner Ebinger.
Yeah, just in looking at this, I'll touch on it later in my report, but the EDC meeting this week, it's a universal concern and complaint around this region on supply chain and on workforce. And this is just the cost of doing business right now. And I appreciate staff, I appreciate construction engineers being here and being able to pivot on this so that we can come in as stable as possible. And I appreciate the commissioners that have been part of this, so I'm very supportive of it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other questions? What's the board's wishes?
I'll make a motion to move ahead with the project.
Is the motion to, for bid package one?
For bid package number one, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing as how we're spending $14 million, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right, so we're good to go to get started, get those contracts, your subcontractors inked and get those prices
Start pushing
secured.
dirt.
All right.
How much more is this, the next part yet gonna cost?
Well, so right now, Commissioner Gross, the all-in, including a lot of equipment, we're looking at $20.3 million now. And originally, when we talked about 14 million, that was not with the equipment. So comparing apples to apples, we're probably looking at 15.3 million compared to 20.3 million, something like that. So this thing from where we started is about $5 million more already.
And from where we started, Mr. Chairman, when we started,
Well, it was 12 million,
yeah, 5 years ago, it was 12 million, so,
5 years ago, though.
yeah.
but that was,
But that's when I had a full head of hair too, so,
I think you had a beard too, didn't you?
yeah, I had a beard as well, yeah.
Santa Claus.
Are we gonna try and get some more money from the state, or is that all done now, or?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, that's all done for this particular project. I should point out, and I've mentioned this a couple of times to SWAC and to others, there are about 6 different solid waste projects that got funded this last funding round, and of the 6, we got the largest award. And that included Ramsey and Washington County, who had a project that's about $28 million, and we got more money than they did. So we went in and asked, actually initially we asked for 8.5, but they cut us back to 7.5.
Commissioner Gross, you reminded me of something that's critically important that we have to all realize here today too, is that we still have not gotten that grant agreement signed with the state of Minnesota. So, we're a little bit going out on a limb here with what we're doing here, but the fact of the matter is I think all they were waiting for was our financial plan on how we're gonna pay for our share. It's just part of the routine of going through with the state grant. And we talked about that with Kirk and with Matt yesterday to come up with and get that rolling and get it in for them to see. I would certainly like for Steve, for us to get that agreement signed so that we could, because right now we don't have 7.5 million either.
No, it's not in the bank.
But it is in legislation.
Mr. Chair, it's been obligated, and it's just a matter of
Yes.
filling out the paperwork, so I'm really not that concerned about that.
I like to have all my i's dotted and t's crossed.
I would agree.
Okay. All right. We did vote on this. Thank you again. We'll see you probably in a couple weeks.
Very good.
We'll probably see you too before that, but
Very good.
I will anyway, I'm sure.
Thank you much.
All right, thank you. And then, and by the way, we'll start getting into those, twice a month meetings then with Commissioner Mojo and I to, all right?
Great, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, our next item is a 850 actually 3 minutes ahead here. I think we can maybe start this. Good morning, Eric. I do want to mention that we do have Terry Williams with the United States Army Corps of Engineers is online with us in case there's any questions amongst Terry, or we'll give her an opportunity to speak if she was so desire. But and then do we have any other online citizens regarding this item on that you know of? Okay, all right, I just wanted to be sure. So with that, good morning, Eric. We'll have you start off, and we obviously have within our packet some information.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. Eric Dodds, for those of you that I haven't met yet, appreciate your time here this morning. As Commissioner Campbell mentioned, Terry Williams is on the phone with us today. She was planning to be here in person, but I understand she had some car troubles, so thanks to Colleen for getting her hooked up online. Also here today, just representing the project and representing those of us that are working on property acquisitions. Chris McShane is with Onstead Twitchell, legal counsel helping us through the process. Jessica Warren is with my team, and then Scott Stinger and Dale Alstein with ProSource, who have been the negotiators out meeting with the property owners. And you might know Dr. Bob and Commissioner Hendrickson as well. So we've filled up your room, I guess, just to recognize the sensitivity of the topic we have here. In your packet, as I understand it, attachment C is a packet related to property rights that we've been trying to secure for the Red River Control Structure component of the Fargo-Moorhead Area Diversion Project. In that packet, there are really 4 parts. The first part, well, a brief agenda sheet, which hopefully you're familiar with that. Following that, there's a resolution, which we're asking for your consideration of the resolution today, and we'll get into that.
So with that now, you have provided an updated resolution, correct?
Correct.
From what was in our original packet? We
Yep.
have that separate? Yep. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Following the resolution is a letter and some additional materials from the Corps of Engineers outlining their request for real estate needs for that Red River Control Structure. A series of maps there that are a little bit complicated, but hopefully you're able to see what the request is. Following the request from the Corps, there's 3 different negotiating summaries. We're talking about 3 distinct property owners, and so those are broken down in your packet. And then the last part is what's called the last written offers. And again, we'll go through those in a little bit of detail here this morning, but just wanted to orientate the group to what you have in front of you for our discussion. So back to the beginning of the packet here, I think the informational memo tries to summarize what we're asking. We've been requested by the Corps of Engineers to purchase the real estate needs for the Red River Control Structure. Their request was to have that land acquired by early August. And so there's, as we just talked about with the solid waste facility, there's construction activity ongoing, and we're trying to stay on schedule. And so the Corps is driving that schedule with their request to have land acquired by August 1st. And so we've been negotiating with the property owners. The Moorhead Clay County Joint Powers Authority had approved some appraisal reports early this year and presented those offers to the property owners and have been negotiating on those property rights for several months. In some cases, we had been in contact with property owners for well over a year, some preliminary designs and that sort of information. And so we have been able to reach a voluntary agreement with one of the 4 property owners that are necessary for the red structure. And unfortunately, we have not yet reached an agreement with the other 3. And because of the time element, I guess we're encouraged to come here and ask to proceed to the next step, which is where Clay County steps in. In this case, the properties are outside of the city of Moorhead, and so Clay County in the Joint Powers Authority is the entity that would step into that role. And what we're asking the Clay County Commission to do today is to pass the resolution in your packet, which basically indicates that we would send the property owners what's called a last written offer. And those last written offers are an offer to secure the right-of-way that's strictly necessary for the Red River Control Structure. And in doing so, that offer would be submitted to the property owners. We give them until June 8th to respond, so 2 weeks, which is typical, and I guess Chris can comment on the legal side of the processes. Give them a couple weeks to respond. If they don't respond or don't accept that offer, then Chris would also be authorized through the resolution to then file an action to secure those property rights to stay close to on schedule. The second page of that cover memo outlines the timeline, and you can see there in that implementation timeline section, if we proceed on the current schedule, we could essentially secure those property rights by early September. And so we're not quite meeting the Corps' request for August 1st, but I have visited with Ms. Williams with the Corps, and she's aware and feels like they can live with this early September date. And so that's what's driving our timeline. I want to stress to all of you, and in the packet you'll see this, that we've been working hard to negotiate to the extent that the property owners have allowed us to. We aim to continue doing that. And so while we have a last written offer that's fairly strict on getting what we need for the red structure, we know that some of these property owners might be more interested in a full buyout of their entire parcel. They might be interested in negotiating some other provisions. And those are things that the MCCJPA board has been flexible and want to continue to be flexible, and trying to cooperate with property owners to the extent that we can reach a voluntary agreement. So maybe I'll pause there, see if you have any questions. I know Chris is standing ready to go through the resolution in more detail. Dale and Scott can provide more detail about the negotiating summaries. But with that, maybe I'll pause and see if there's any initial questions.
All right, any questions at this point? Commissioner Kaylee.
Could you remind me when the last date is to accept a voluntary offer?
The resolution spells out some dates, and if I turn to page, I believe it's June 8th. Chris, which paragraph am I looking for here where it says those dates?
Page 3, paragraph 4.
So paragraph 4, if the property owners do not agree on or before June 8th to convey the property rights, then Onstad Twitchell is authorized on behalf of Clay County to begin the eminent domain proceedings.
Are these people against the project, or are they just against the offer?
Could be both.
I guess Scott and Dale maybe can comment a bit on some of the nuances from my perspective, and I've met with a couple of these property owners myself. I think the opposition to the project is still there, but that's probably softened a touch just in the fact that I think they understand that the project is real now and it is going to happen. They may not like that, but I think there's still some opposition. As you see in the negotiating packets, it really comes down to a value issue. Property owners are asking for, 3, maybe 4 times the appraised value. And I think we're certainly flexible and willing to offer more than appraised value, but we're not able to close that big a gap. And so it becomes a value issue. And, I think as you read through there, some of the property owners are reflecting on, other acquisitions that were done for other parts and other geographies where maybe there's, different market values or different justifications for values. And I guess in our perspective, and I know these have all been through the MCCJPA board, and through, Steve and Bob and others, we've, reviewed those counter offers, and none of them have been approved yet, I guess. Maybe a way to summarize that.
If I can comment on that too, going to Commissioner Kaylee's comment, the June 8th date is one date. There still is a process that follows that. And I think negotiations can always still go on beyond that June 8th date. I think that's really important to know. And I want to speak on behalf of the MCCJPA board that we will always try to be as fair as we can be with these Minnesota parcels that are, whether they're flowage easements or whatever that goes on that come before us. We also have to be aware that we're also stewards of public's money, and we need to understand that we just don't have an open checkbook, and there's ways that you value things, and we follow the rules that govern us on how we value and how we make those offers. So I think that's important to know, but we do have some range of flexibility based on each individual case, because they're not all the same when you deal with different appraisals. So having said that, and by the way, resolution, I think, Colleen, resolution 2021 it will be 24. Colleen, just for the record, when we do this resolution, is it 25? It's changed to 25, okay. Commissioner Evering.
Just to clarify, and I think you implied this, but I want to make sure I've got it right. Any land that's involved in this last final offer and any subsequent condemnation, whatever, would strictly be what's necessary for the project, and discussions or agreements by whole parcels or land swaps or anything other than that can't be addressed with this process.
Yeah, so there's kind of a parallel process we're going to continue to work down. The legal side, the last written offer, we've been talking with our legal counselors and want to remain fairly narrowed, focused on what's strictly needed for the red structure. The second side of that parallel process is we'll continue to negotiate and try to be as flexible as we can, even beyond the June 8th date, all the way up to the, if we have to go the full 90 days, and frankly, even beyond that, I believe there's a extended period that, we can continue to negotiate. And in our experience, and Chris can maybe add on to this, even after that 90-day date, a lot of these situations get resolved before you go through the whole court process. And so I'm hopeful for that, but this does provide us an opportunity to sort of control the timeline.
Okay, I think I'd like to, Chris, do you want to have any comments?
The Clay County Commission has the eminent domain authority for acquiring property that's necessary to implement its local water management plan, one of the elements of which is flood damage reduction. And the authority would then extend to having that 90-day, it's called quick take under law, but that 90-day time period after we give notice to acquire, it will require a hearing with a judge before any possession has transferred, and that will confirm the acquisition of the right-of-way necessary, and that will happen towards the end of that 90 days. So once we've had the hearing before a judge and that 90 days expires, at that point is when the right-of-way will transfer and work can commence and all the permit applications and everything else that goes with that. The next step is appointing eminent domain commissioners. It's a 3-member panel, and both sides get input into who's going to be on that panel. Clay County, or this region, doesn't have a ton of experience with the eminent domain process through the court system, so the list of commissioners is relatively small. So we'll have to go out and find experts in the real estate field to fill that commission. And then it's up to the parties and the commission as to when the matter will ultimately be resolved. Many times the property owners will push the hearing date out until after the project is complete, because they may be able to get damages as a result of the work that goes on with the project and interference that has with the rest of their property. And it looks better from the landowner perspective to be able to quantify that at the end. But the extension of time also provides more and more opportunity to try to resolve it. One of the main difficulties that we have with these 3 properties is that not only will we need, for 2 out of the 3, not only will we need this property for the right-of-way control structure, but we'll also need a flowage easement over it. The unfortunate thing is that we're not in a position to value that flowage easement yet. That should be happening within the next 6 to 9 months. So to the extent that can be combined with the acquisition of the property necessary for the right-of-way control structure, that is also an option. We've done that on the North Dakota side where we have amended the eminent domain process to include more property rights than it started with in an effort to have only one action. It's easier and quicker and less expensive for everybody, both for the project and for the landowner, and less stress to the poor landowners that have to go through this to be able to do it once as opposed to do it twice or even more than that. So the last offer process is done in Minnesota and not done in North Dakota. And the reason it is done in Minnesota versus not done in North Dakota is that the Minnesota statutes have a threshold for whether attorney's fees from a landowner are paid or are not paid. The Minnesota law is that if a landowner receives up to 120% of the last written offer, then no attorney's fees shall be paid to the landowner. If the landowner receives between 120% and 140% of the last written offer, then the landowner may receive attorney's fees, reasonable attorney's fees. If a landowner receives more than 140% of the last written offer, so 40% above, then they shall receive reasonable attorney's fees. On the North Dakota side, there is no 20%, 40%, so the offers remain the same. And there's been discussion both with negotiators, with staff, involved Steve and Bob, as to where that last written offer amounts come in. And the hope would be that we can get it resolved because the numbers are higher than appraised. But to the extent we can't, we do need to stick on the time frame that's been proposed and be able to provide the right-of-way necessary to acquire the permits and start the contracting process and ultimately construction.
All right, thank you. And all of what we're doing here follows the federal guidelines for a federal project, right, for acquisition purposes?
Yes, it does, Commissioner Campbell. The overall Uniform Relocation Act, which governs both the relocation but also acquisition process for a federal project, it layers on top of the state statutes that govern takings in a particular state. The process that's being followed with respect to who's doing the appraisals and how the appraisals are done and what relocation would look like will all be in accordance with either the state or the federal law, whichever is more advantageous to the landowner. because those statutes and those regulations are the base, and you can go up from there.
Thank you, Chris. Terry Williams, you're online, I guess, maybe you're probably interested in the time frame again and the need to have these properties. Would you care to address that from the Corps standpoint?
Good morning.
Good morning, Terry.
I turned my camera on. Hopefully you can see me. It's really good to see all of you. I was hoping to be there face to face.
There she is.
Face-to-face meetings were pretty rare for the past year, and I was really looking forward to it. Thanks for making this virtual possible. So with respect to the Red River control structure, as you might know, this will be the largest contract that the federal government will award for this project by far. The I-29 contract was the largest at $67 million. This is projected to be at least 3 times as much as that, and a lot bigger than the Wild Rice control structure. So in order to have the Red River structure completed by 2026 to hopefully match the diversion channel completion and have an operational project, we need to award this contract early, calendar year 2022. It'll take 4.5 full construction seasons to get this construction done. And we currently have about $175 million of construction ongoing. And without the Diversion Authority's efforts in land acquisition, we wouldn't have anything going on. So we really appreciate what the Diversion Authority has done for us in land acquisition so that we can progress the federal project. So in order to start the permitting process with both states, they like to see that all the land is acquired. And so having everything done in September certainly works within, I think, the window of working with the DNR and the State Water Commission and also the Buffalo Red River Watershed District on this project, because this is the first piece that the feds that we will be building in Minnesota. So again, the schedule seems, pretty long, but we do have a very long contracting process for something this large. And also a lot of coordination to do with both states in order to build the Red River structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. As we go through this, process, I don't know if Terry's, we got an echo going on here. Terry, can you go on mute, please? Thank you. As we go on this process, we also have one of our Minnesota partners here, Chuck Hendrickson from the city of Moorhead, and obviously I've followed a lot of things that go on in the city, and Dr. Zimmerman is here as well, and I know the city of Moorhead also takes anytime you go through eminent domain very seriously, and it is an ultimate last resort that we would ever want to have to use. And that's why within our packet, I had asked Eric to make sure to provide us with a history of the communications and the offer process that's been going on with these landowners. I know, Chuck, in the city, you've always asked and required that as well, to make sure that there's a good record that we've done everything that we can moving forward with those offers. And I don't know if ProSource wants to speak up, they certainly can, but I think we know that through the MCC JPA that there's been an extensive process that's gone on in this with these landowners. I think we've kind of covered most things. I don't know if we have any board members who have any other questions regarding this process. So we do have a slight modification to the resolution that was included in our packet, and it is now, according to Clean, it will be Resolution 2021-25, and this one, the request before us is to adopt that resolution? What is the board's wishes?
I move adoption of the resolution as amended.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Ebinger. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gross. And according to the resolution, those commissioners' names will be included in the resolution. We would ask for a roll call vote, please. Is there any further discussion before we?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I think it's just to be said, I know there are existing frustrations with the shorter abbreviated timeline of the Corps, having the letter in March to make sure that the last written offer is secured before the middle of June. I just am not sure that provides Minnesota landowners with the same flexibility that's been provided with others. I do appreciate the timeline of contacts, but due to that, I will not be supporting this motion.
All right, any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Nay.
Yes.
Aye.
All right, that motion is agreed to, the resolution is agreed to. Thank you, folks, for being here, and I would like to say, again, from the standpoint of Commissioner Mojo and I on the MCC JPA, we look forward to hopefully seeing some negotiation continue outside of the courtroom on these properties, so we will work to get that done.
The one question is the last offers, whose letterhead would the county like that to go out on? Currently, they're just drafted as in blank. I'm not sure if that's something that the county would like that to come from the county, from the negotiator, even from my office. It's up to the county at this point as to how that should work. So.
From our standpoint, Brian, is there?
I think if this board, obviously I'm not in favor of it, but if this board just voted on that action, I certainly hope that you have the responsibility to have it on your own letterhead.
Yeah, I think that would be fine then.
And I think that makes sense. I just wanted to confirm that before we send it over to Steve and get that signed, so.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Steve, we have the preliminary budget timeline.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I don't think there's a time in the calendar that goes faster from the adoption of the previous budget until this time of the year, but here we are again, starting the budget planning process. This morning, for your consideration, we have the 2021 proposed budget timeline. I'm going to just kind of touch on some of the target dates here this morning, and at the end, with your approval, we would be looking for a motion to adopt. Certainly, each budget cycle brings some challenges, and again, with COVID and some of the other issues that we've been facing, we'll certainly bring forward. But we do have a timeline here to go through. About 3 weeks ago, Darren began the process of getting the wage information to Lori. Lori's been putting our packets together, and they'll be going out to our department heads here as early as Friday. They'll have roughly about 3 weeks to prepare those budgets and turn them back into Lori. Lori will then compile them, and then together with myself and each department head will go line through those budgets before ultimately we begin bringing them to you in after the 4th of July week through July and August. By statute, we're required to set our preliminary budget or levy by October 1st. And we generally try to do that 2 weeks prior to that, so we have the opportunity when we bring that proposal forward, if there's any adjustments that need to be made, it allows for that time to do so. We have a little bit of flexibility in our truth and taxation piece. Historically, our AMC conference, state conference, is held that first Tuesday of the month in December, which is going to be the case as long as we're still able to meet in person by December. And so the first, it's a little different in the standpoint, the first Tuesday is the 7th, and so we would be looking to propose that we have our Truth and Taxation on December 14th. And we would have our board meeting at 5 o'clock that evening, and then followed by Truth and Taxation at 6. Because of how the calendar lays out this month, I would be recommending that we not have a board meeting the week of the 6th. Rather move that.
6th of December.
The 6th of December, rather move that up, in November, there are 5 Tuesdays, and we would look to have a meeting on the November 25th, I believe is that date. With the understanding of the Truth and Taxation on the 14th, we would look for a final adoption of the levy and the 2022 budget on December 21st, 2021.
So you want November 30th?
No, is that the final Tuesday? Yes.
So the recommendation would be to change our schedule to have a county board meeting on November 30th and to not have a county board meeting on December 7th. And that would require a motion to make those changes.
So move.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion?
Just maybe want to make sure that gives us enough time to have those discussions. I understand it's only a week, but, typically, we're still having discussions in terms of where we want the budget to go.
The final adoption of the budget, though, isn't scheduled till December 21st.
Good, okay.
So we'd still be, we could do it sooner than that if we're ready, but we have till then, so. Any further discussion on the motion? And then that would also then include, if I can, Commissioner Gross, did we have before on our calendar that the December 14th be at 5 o'clock, or do we need to change that to that?
I think we need to make that adjustment also.
Can that be included in your motion?
Include that.
And is that okay with your, okay. All right, so the motion would be to November 30th, not have a meeting on December 7th, and that our meeting on Tuesday, December 14th would be at 5 PM with the Truth and Taxation at 6 PM. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried, all right. And in terms of the actual schedule, we don't need to adopt that, do we, or do you want us to?
We have taken adoption of the schedule in previous years.
All right, all right. So you have before you a proposed budget calendar.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed budget chair.
All right, thank you, Commissioner
Calendar.
Monroe.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gailey. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. So I'm assuming we're going to hear a lot up from our departments on line item number 5, July and August.
Yes, sir, we will.
Okay, thank you, Steve. We did vote, right? Yes, okay. All right, next we have, consider motion to approve a purchase agreement. Steve and Joe. Good morning, Joe.
Morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you recall, back on May 8th, the board met in closed session, and coming out of that session, the board granted Joe Olson, our facilities director, the ability to negotiate on the building for our county's needs. And so we're here to provide an update on those negotiations.
Okay, so we've had a few different meetings back and forth, but we've come to an agreement that a $1.3 million offer is what has been agreed upon as far as the purchase price of this building. We met with both all the department heads that are going to be sharing this facility and looked at it, and they've all liked it and agree that this building will work. So one of the biggest parts of this is leasing back to them. One of the negotiating pieces here was they had to have to build their own building. And so we worked out an agreement that could be, we would have a lease agreement to them and lease that back to them until April of next year. But we would assume 3 bays in November or so, or whenever we feel we need to move in the fall there. Talking with the sheriff as well, he's okay with moving his evidence and all that stuff there and building a area for him, so we'd be allowed to do that as well. So we have a plan with this $1.3 million. If this did happen, everything could be moved over in the fall, and we would be ready to go. We just have to work out that lease agreement, so. That's pretty much.
Yeah, and just, so each of you should have a packet, or
Yep.
a packet in front of you that shows the building in question. It's located on 2660 16th Avenue South in Moorhead, out in the industrial park. It's about 7/10 mile west of the new government center, kind of centrally located from the courthouse and highway. In looking at this building, it's about 16,000 square feet. It is sprinkled, a sprinkled system. It has nine doors, and it also has roughly about a 1,500 square foot, 2-level office space there on what would be the south end. If you recall, back in when Joe presented RFPs on a storage unit, we were looking at about a 50 by 200
Yep.
building, which is 10,000 square feet. And so I think as we've saw with the different issues we have earlier today, and with the cost of prices, this seemed like a good option. Again, the original asking price of this building was $1.5 million. As Joe mentioned, we would be looking to purchase that as quickly as June 15th, with the understanding that we would lease it back to JT's Lawn Service for up until April of next year, with the understanding that in the event that his building is built, and he moves, that they would move out prior to that. Taxes from that standpoint would be prorated based on ownership, and also the electrical utilities piece would be the responsibility of JT up until the point that we moved into the facility, and at that point we would take over that piece.
Sure. Yep. And then along within the agreement is an environmental study that contingent upon satisfactory of that as well. And the other piece, we estimated about 20 grand to fit up to build the walls that we need for the evidence and stuff too as well, so. Yep.
What are you looking at as far as the lease agreement? Are we getting money out of that deal, or are we just,
Now, it's,
we're just gonna lease it to them?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gross, it's very similar to what we did with the RDO. We're just looking to a dollar for that
Okay.
timeframe.
Yep. Yep. It was part of the negotiating piece of, they're able to at least operate and build their building as well and get that piece in play, and it allows us to move in the fall, so there'll be a point in time where we're working together there.
Is there a definite date that they have to be out of there, or, if April comes along and, well, we're not quite ready yet, do we go into May, do we go to June, or do we start charging?
Yeah,
How the agreement reads right now would be is that they would have till April 1st
yeah.
of 2022, and then they would have to vacate that area.
And he has indicated that if they end up, he wants to get going on the site work and everything right away now, if this happens. So he's indicated if he can get a building, that he'll go sooner than later as well. So he doesn't want to go into, take this till April, but.
Commissioner Kaylee.
So we've talked about a lot of big expensive projects today, and this is another big number.
Yep.
Can you just give an overview for the public on how this is being paid for if we go forward with this?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kaylee. Again, the asking price is $1.3 million. If you recall, we previously had done a land swap with the city of Moorhead. And part of that land swap, we would receive $660,987.87. And so that leaves the remainder of $639,012.20. And that figure has been included in Joe's capital improvement funds. So we would be requesting that if there were a motion to come today to be accepted, that would include the potential of utilizing those funds in a future bond.
All right, any other questions? Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we've talked a little bit about space and needs and future space needs in terms of your capital improvement plans. Have you been able to identify down the road if there are any of the agencies that we work with that would be able to create a revenue source for space in this building?
Yeah, Commissioner Mojo, just looking, I guess, at the rough numbers, it's about 1,000 square feet that, if you were to rent out the office portion of it, so I think that was, you would gain about 13,000 roughly in revenue there. I think you're gonna end up spending about 7,000 to hire a cleaner, so you do get a net gain of about 5,000 there if we did choose to do that. So I haven't specifically reached out yet to any agencies or anything, but that's a rough or pretty close number of what we could rent that piece for.
And in terms of planning for the future, will there be items in your future growth plan that we could eliminate with this?
Well, we'll definitely have room to expand. I don't see us needing any kind of a storage type facility or, more storage. I think this is definitely a future plan for everything.
Like the next 200 years.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, then if I might just follow up, I know that both Commissioner Campbell and I have been in discussions with the solid waste recovery, and you all heard that discussion today, that there is significant volatility in the steel market, but also with metal buildings. And I think as we were looking to even ordering those, there's a substantial delay, up to 7-8 months, even if that were ordered today. I think that what we would have found with a much, much smaller building, that we would be paying the exact same amount for a building of this, for a building of that size versus this size. And I certainly feel that there's some areas where there could be revenue streams included, but also think that the quality of this building is unlike anything that we'd be able to build.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to move ahead with the purchase agreement using the funds from the Moorhead transaction, and then also going into Joe's to purchase this building.
Second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Kaylee. Any comments? I'm going to. First off, I want to say it's a good building. Right? But I also want to say it's a good building that should be used for commercial use within our city. A place where jobs can potentially be created there and used. Going to Commissioner Kaylee's comments about how do we pay for this, unlike a building that we would do on our own land, this is going to be a redistribution of tax, property tax, to all property owners in Clay County. And it's not going to be for 1 year. It's going to be, for good. It might be $40,000 would be the tax on it this year. Next year, it would be more than that, and the following year more than that. It compounds. So there is going to be an ongoing cost in having this building on an annual basis to the property owners in Clay County. I want to talk a little bit about the size. This is 16,000 square feet. Our current facility that we have right now before we did the land swap is about 4,000. We went in and we looked, and we asked for all of our needs on behalf of, and future expansion. And that number said, well, going into the future, we'd probably need 7,000. We did more than that. We even added another 2,500 square foot bay to bring it to 10,000 square feet. Enough to bring us way, way into the future. And we have this on a property where we're not, once again, dividing and splitting us into all over the place for the purpose of maintaining snow removal and everything else that goes with it. There's a variety of other reasons why I oppose this. I certainly agree that it's a good deal, and it's a deal I wish that the private enterprise could take advantage of that good deal and bring some more jobs into our area that could use it. So those are my comments. I oppose it. I certainly respect the position of the board members in understanding it's a good deal. But when we start to go through and we try to figure out ways how we can make property taxes more affordable, this isn't one of them. It's not one of them. So, okay, I've said my piece, so. Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. How long has this been on the market?
Well, it hasn't, it was kind of off and on.
It had been
wasn't-
previously on the market.
Yeah.
It currently wasn't on the market when we approached Mr. West.
Okay, so it hadn't sold when it was previously on. My other, just a note is that this business is planning on building a new building that would offset the taking this off of the tax rolls. So I think that helps justify my cost or my reasoning. And the other piece is, if we're looking at a fiscally responsible pieces of it, it's always important to make sure that you are using taxpayer dollars wisely, which I think Commissioner Campbell stated as well. But this is a building that we do have identified that we need a building and have identified that it would come at a far greater cost than we were anticipating. And so this is an opportunity to secure a building at a reasonable cost.
Any other comments? And if I can just clarify, Commissioner Gross and Commissioner Cayley, I'm hoping that your motion would be to include the successful environmental study.
Is there a need for the environmental study?
Well, I would certainly say so. There could be potential contamination there that I wouldn't want to have be the responsibility of Clay County to
Yeah,
clean
Joe
up.
said it was pending.
Yeah, it was rough, yeah, it's about $5,000 for that study to be done, and we have that in our purchase agreement just to protect us in case there's something massive that we find out and, you know, that.
There's a need for it, I'll include it in my motion.
Okay. Okay. And again, if I can just follow up on that. So typically, in the commercial world, or in the private business world, when you acquire land, if there's a lending agency involved where there's a mortgage on the property, banks or lending institutions will certainly require an environmental study, and they do that for a reason. They do that to make sure that there are no problems within the land that can cause a greater financial hardship down the road. So it's critical, that's the critical component. Now maybe, and that's why I even suggested to even ask them if there had been one done before that could just be updated. But maybe there never was one because if there's no lending institution involved, there's no requirement for an environmental study. So that's why I'd reached out to Steve and to Joe to make sure that we do, if we're gonna buy this, that we make sure that we're protecting ourselves, at least on a phase one study. If they find something that's phase one study, then it usually will then go to a requirement for phase two to get more detailed into.
If we do this study, how far out will we go on the land purchase? We only got a few feet on the land, don't we?
Well, I believe Lot 12 goes out a little bit. There was a piece in there that went way out that we felt we didn't need. and that's a triangle piece of it, so, but it does go out a little ways, what Lot 12 is, so.
One of the things, Commissioner Gross, that you want to make sure of is, you know, part of what a Phase 1 study also does, is it looks at what the occupants has been and what they're using. And here you have a place that deals with fertilizer and an awful lot of other chemicals that were involved. And so we just want to make sure that I don't foresee a problem, but I think it's a good assurance before we commit to a final price that.
Commissioner Campbell, I did verify too, there was not one done by them in the beginning, so.
So that's even more reason to have one now. All right, so if that's okay, I just want to clarify that. So any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
That motion is agreed to.
Thank you.
One quick thing too, with this agreement, I was going to ask permission to pull the RFPs for that's due at the end of the week, you know, so we hadn't had a lot of interest. There's a few involved, but I'd like to pull that so they're not thinking they got to submit something, so.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to pull the RFPs.
Second.
It'd sure be nice to see what those numbers would have been. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. I am opposed.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, committee reports. Commissioner Mojo, you want to go first?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week, I attended the Planning Commission. There were 4 hearings that night. There was one CUP request for an ag service established in Eglin Township that was approved. A conditional use permit for a feedlot on an existing parcel in Park Township that was approved. A request for a conditional use permit for a commercial storage business on a parcel in Scree Township, and that was also approved. There was discussion, open hearing on Clay County, for Clay County's request for a text amendment to the development code. If you recall, we did have a open hearing for us to discuss the urban expansion districts, Tier 1 zoning districts allowances for service businesses. And as a condition of that, I did, and this board requested that there be approval from the city of Moorhead and city of Dilworth. So there was significant discussion on that piece, if that was legal or not legal. And, you know, I think there's some differing opinions, but it was a split vote to send to this board to not change that recommendation. We will still need an open hearing, my understanding. And then had an update from the Clay County Comprehensive Plan. We're continuing to reach out to different industries, and we'll have meetings with members from the ag community forthcoming. Last week, I had the MetroCog committee. We had general updates. We did have an update on the 17th Street corridor in Moorhead that Commissioner Cayley updated 2 weeks ago, and then general business. Yesterday, I attended a Lakeland Mental Health Board meeting, really good updates in terms of programming, and currently the majority of their programs are recovering from the pandemic slowdown that they had seen. There are significantly more first-time clients that they have seen going forward or in the past, which just speaks a little bit to the need possibly that's out there. Had updates from the Clay County Collaborative and Otter Tail Collaborative. The all of the school-based programming has really, while they've had to pivot during COVID, have really done a good job in addressing needs of students as well. We did have a closed session to discuss the outcome of our CEO evaluation, and then after the meeting, I did have a meeting with our CEO. I am pleased to announce that that the Lakeland Board is very pleased with the direction that the CEO is taking Lakeland. Yesterday, I also had the solid waste meeting that we discussed the contract with construction engineers. I believe that concludes my reports, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Ebinger.
Thank you. Tuesday, the 18th, I attended a mutual aid response meeting held at the Umcomb Center. This involves the recent changes to the Minnesota use of force law for police officers that's resulted in former mutual aid that we had from North Dakota law enforcement officers being placed on hold. They're not coming over. We can't operate as teams in a lot of different aspects. Present was Mayor Dardis and Carlson. We also had Michael Redlinger representing Fargo. Our county attorney, Brian Melton, and the state's attorney, Birch Burdick, were there. Both sheriffs, Empting and Joyner. Chief Zabolski and Ornis from West Fargo and West Fargo, along with Chief Monroe and Deputy Chief Jacobson. Mary Sherling attended virtually. Robert Wilson from Cass County was also there. The discussion was the loss of mutual aid as a result of the changes to the law. There was some discussion about the deprivation of Fifth and 14th Amendment rights to officers, potential litigation coming out of that. It was identified as a major flaw in the current law. We did not come up with any specific agreement to change the response or lack of response that North Dakota is currently doing, but the chiefs and sheriffs are discussing things that they can still do together that won't submit North Dakota officers to have to comply with Minnesota law. We also agreed to continue a dialogue and work together on the issue. Wednesday, the 19th, virtual attendance, the Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC Executive Board. We worked on some issues for the upcoming Leadership Summit that's being planned for June 30th. As I mentioned earlier, one of the consistent things you hear from employers and businesses in our area is workforce issues, supply chain problems, and housing has now become a major workforce issue, particularly in light of the diversion and people that'll be brought in to work on those plans as well as other, just a general growth in our area. So housing is an issue. We briefly discussed the Blue Zone project, which is basically a healthy community initiative that's national. It's rather pricey. The governor of North Dakota is, and his office is pushing it, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of interest here locally. Later that day, I attended, on the 20th, the next day, Clay County Public Health Substance Abuse Committee. We discussed a grant, a 5-year grant for suicide prevention that the county's brought in. It is kind of dovetailing with multicultural issues and substance abuse issues, and they're trying to correlate all of this grant work together to complement each other. We're currently they've just received a positive community norms grant for 5 years for the DGF schools. It's going to address vaping, tobacco, and marijuana use. There's a federal drug-free community grant for 5 years. It's been submitted for Moorhead schools, and wait and see if that materializes or not. And then a harm reduction program is being worked on with Moorhead schools. That would address youth who refuse restorative justice to try and attach some consequence to possession and use of tobacco products with these minors other than school suspension, which is shown to be negative. Locally, Dilworth has passed an ordinance that addresses vaping, tobacco coupons, and small flavored cigars. They can only be sold in packages of at least 5 at a cost of $15 or more. So that did pass the Dilworth city council. Moorhead is still working on an ordinance. Thursday, the 20th, I also attended the Recorder's Office Compliance Fund meeting. Recorder Kimberly Savageau is planning, I believe, next week, next commission meeting, to come forward with her compliance and funding report to us. Clay County, despite the fact that they moved offices, that they had a major project to copy or electronically store all of their records and a lot of other just basic COVID-related issues. They were 100% compliant with Minnesota statute. That was real estate documents returned to citizens within 10 business days and electronically recorded documents within 5 business days. They were batting 100% on that. The bottom line is to be shown in compliance, you need to meet 90%. So real proud of the efforts that they've done on this. We discussed some of the challenges they faced with the COVID issues and some of the funds that were expended to support the office during that time. There was going to be a discussion involving increase of copies. This would not impact on property owners, but on businesses that use these documents, and that'll be brought before the commission in the report. And that completes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Ebinger. Commissioner Kaylee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 18th, I attended the Adult Mental Health Local Advisory Council. We elected officers, and I took the treasurer or the secretary position for that group. We also discussed speaker topics for upcoming meetings for the year and voted on who would, members of the public who would receive stipends for attending those meetings. On the 19th, I attended AMC County Government 101. They had a session on budgeting, and I have pages of notes, which I won't go over right now, but it was, that was a really great training. On the 19th, I also attended the Historical and Cultural Society of Clay County meeting. The intent of that meeting was to sign the professional service agreement with the city of Moorhead, but due to a few issues in there, some of them just typos, some of them misunderstandings, we were not able to approve that at that meeting. An update to that, members of the executive committee did meet with Dan Molly and got some of those issues straightened out. And so there will be a special meeting this week on Thursday to approve that and assign the professional service agreement for the HCSEC being in that building and the services that they provide. On the 21st, we had our Early Childhood Initiative meeting. We planned some parent education trainings that will go on throughout the year. We're looking at providing a meal and training on a range of topics for parents to come. And we also talked about some dental outreach opportunities within the community. Dental care access for our kids is hard for a lot of our families and is limited. So there are several dental grants, and one of them is M-State dental students, and they'll be doing some education outreach as well as some screening and education as well through Jane Neubauer. On the 24th, I attended an AMC Futures coffee. There was a talk from our state demographer, Susan Brower. It's always very interesting to hear from her. She talked a little bit about the census data and what her office has to do with redistricting. So it sounds like the data packet will be sent to the demographer's office sometime towards the end of August, and then they'll have to adapt that file so it's actually easier to use. And we'll get some information on that later. One of the things she also talked about with regards to that census data is there was a new method of increasing privacy for the responses called differential privacy. And there's some concerns that this went too far. And what's happened is some of the information, like about race, has been spread out. So if we've got a correctional facility in a certain area and the actual people living in that area are more Native American, or, you know, like there's a higher representation of minorities in a particular area, that data has been spread out. So now maybe some of those ethnicities are showing up in a resort town or somewhere else. So it's not accurate is the problem. So when we're looking at what areas are underserved, what areas need more outreach in different areas, that differential privacy is skewing the data for us. There was some talk about maybe AMC or counties could reach out to the Census Department and argue for this differential privacy issue to be fixed and corrected. They still have that raw data. They could just choose to use a different algorithm to protect the privacy of individuals. So Susan said that she would be sharing more information on that because she just gave a very high-level overview of what was happening. But before anybody were to send a letter or anything, she wanted us to have a very clear understanding of what was going on there. On the 24th, we also had an insurance committee meeting. There was a presentation and some questions and answers on what it might look like if the county went self-insured instead of going with Lakes County Service Co-op and the Medica bid. So there would be an RFP process in which we would work to make sure that the benefits in-network providers and coverage would be as similar as possible to what we have in our current plans. We are waiting on more data to make those decisions, though. So folks should know that there are options out there still. We haven't decided for sure which direction that we are going, but we are committed to making sure that our employees have the coverage that they expect. Also on the 24th, through the Planning Commission, I attended an Onward Moorhead Comprehensive Plan update. That comprehensive plan is now moving into phase 3. So phase 1 was gathering a lot of input, laying some of the foundations. Phase 2 was vision and goal setting analysis. So now phase 3 is going to be working on focus areas and plans for those, and then what areas they want to study moving forward. So for an example, we're talking about the East 10 area as a focus area and what different things they should be studying in there. And you can find all of this information on the City of Moorhead website. If you look for Onward Moorhead, there's a story map and survey. You can sign up for notifications. There's a frequently asked questions page. So there's a lot of information there. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gross.
Yeah, last Wednesday, Commissioner Cayley and I attended the fire and EMT recognition. There was a proclamation that we read there showing our support for the fire and EMT people. So that was held at the Dilworth Community Center. Yesterday, I attended the MRC meeting. There's some notes on open meeting law that I'm trying to get from Dan Larson right now, but I want to get the update on that. But what the MRC are supporting right now includes $75 million for local road improvement, $300 million for local bridges, and $70 million for broadband. So those are the three programs they're supporting in the transportation. They they also support the county-based purchasing. And I don't know if any of you have been aware of that in the last couple of years, there's been some problems with that county-based purchasing, and we support that the county-based purchasing continue and oppose the Department of Human Services taking that over. There's a lot of discussion again on the deer processing that's going on in garages. They want to put a limit of 15,000, that a person can make $15,000, which is quite a bit already, but, or 200 animal carcasses limit there, which is, it's pretty high if you're going to do that many in your garage and stuff like that, so, but they are looking at coming up with a good plan on how they can, I guess they're concerned about, even if you just process 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, you know, can you do that? So they're looking at that. Discussion on Enbridge, a lot of discussion there is who's gonna pay for it. They're still looking at the state picking up that bill so that the counties don't get strapped with that. Also, they were looking at that California road cars. I mean, there was the Clean Car Act that they're coming up with there. They want to put a 2-year delay on that. I mean, they're looking at right now, the state of Minnesota can't afford to take care of the roads yet properly. Now they're going to spend some more money on charging stations and all that. So they feel we're probably moving ahead with that a little bit too far. And I feel that these cars that are coming out, that the cost of some of them, the average citizens may have trouble affording one of those cars. So, and I think that concludes my report.
Yes, yes, thank you, Commissioner. Yep.
I did forget to update in my Lakeland Mental Health report. Because of the positive margins, they will not be asking the counties for an increase in the psychiatry contracts, which is, I think it's been 2 or 3 years that they've been doing that, based on that, so it's promising to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have to go back on mine for 2 weeks, so on Tuesday, the 11th, we had a highway tracking meeting, and I'm sure Commissioner Gross had updated you on it, but we did have a discussion regarding the FM diversion project and how it relates to road raises in the, like around County State Aid Highway 26 north of, in the north area, as well as other road raises between here and Georgetown, a little bit of discussion about the completion of the Georgetown levee system to meet 100-year flood protection, which would require a road raise on Highway 75. We had a maintenance equipment discussion, North Broadway Bridge update, which right now I don't know that bridge is going anywhere real fast. And we did talk about the road tour, and I think that's been scheduled. I think all of you have been informed about that date. I believe it's June 14th? Yeah, okay. All right, then on Thursday, the 13th, we had our Lakes Country Service Cooperative meeting. And again, the big item of discussion, of course, is in the healthcare side, you know, the change that's going on there. As of right now in the schools, they did lose 116 contracts, and by that's 116 families or individuals. It's not 116 different agencies. However, they did pick up 455 new ones. So there's some attractive things going on there too. And again, going to what Commissioner Kaylee talked about in the insurance update, there's a lot yet to cover there. Then on moving to last week, On the 17th, we had a follow-up meeting with our Representative Keeler and regarding the juvenile detention, the House and Senate file number that we had concerned about and written letters on, and I think ultimately I don't know that we ever came to an agreement on our position versus at the state level. There was certainly some good dialogue there that I think we all agree that there's certain areas where there's probably some people being housed in those facilities that shouldn't be, and that would help part of the problem right there. And we kind of emphasize that maybe that's something the state should focus on rather than our facility that has a good record. On Tuesday, the 18th, I had my first cataract surgery, and I would recommend to the public that if you can't see, to check into that, because I have a bad eye, and my bad eye is much better. Next week, I will also be gone. I'm going to have my good eye done, and then I hope that I can actually see your faces better. So, all right, anyway. On the 19th, I want to thank Commissioner Gross and Kaylee for attending that deal in Dilworth for the fire. I was still under my recovery, so I was unable to go to that, but thank you for being there for that. On Friday, the 21st, we had a Prairie Lakes, our first budget meeting. Several things were discussed there, and there will be more to come. We certainly have some positive things within there, and there are also some things of concern yet. So we will continue to work on that and come up with a proposed budget probably in the July timeframe so that everybody will know what the new tipping fee rate for that facility will be. Okay, then on the 24th, yesterday, we did have the insurance committee meeting, and I think Commissioner Kaylee kind of did a good wrap-up of that, and I concur with her message that certainly we'll do everything we can to, in terms of having the appropriate and the right coverage for all of our employees. So and again, that insurance committee, it has a significant representation from all of our different bargaining units as well as non-bargaining units employees. So we have a good mix of people there, and it's well led by Darren and his staff. So yesterday afternoon, again, we had the solid waste transfer discussion, and as alarming as it is where we've gone with that, I think we're going to come up with a financial plan that'll be able to deal with making sure that we can get that project completed. And that concludes my report. Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 18th, I also participated in the mutual aid response that Commissioner Ebinger and Commissioner Campbell had mentioned. On the 18th, I also sat in on a web meeting with Rhonda Porter, Brian Melton, Kathy McKay, and a number of other Clay County personnel, and heard about the South Central Community Behavioral Initiative down in Blue Earth County, and dealing with crisis residential services. That afternoon, I participated with that same group in a virtual meeting with DHS and talking about licensing for residential services. On the 19th, we had county management. We had talked about vaccination protocol changes for the staff with masks and social distancing, the budget timelines, and also our management retreat that's held today. The STRIVE met that afternoon for final preparations for our management retreat. We reviewed the surveys that were compiled by our staff and commissioners that we'll be discussing today. That afternoon, I participated in the news conference out in Dilworth for the fire emergency responders, and also met with Dan Molly on a series of Clay County and City Moorhead issues. And the 19th, I also participated in the Recorder's Office Compliance Fund meeting that was discussed by Commissioner Ebinger. On the 19th, that afternoon, I participated in MCC JPA pre-meeting. We talked about the letters of last refusal that we dealt with this morning. The upcoming agenda, where we'll be talking about some 2 task orders and extension of a existing lease. On the 21st, I met with Matt Jacobson, Lori Johnson, and Nancy on a property issue here within the county. On the 21st, I went to the solid waste meeting with the construction engineers Burns and Mack to talk about the resource recovery project. On the 24th, I participated in the insurance meeting, which has been covered by Commissioner Campbell and Kaylee, and that afternoon also participated in the resource recovery discussion covered by Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Mojo. On the, just a few notes of upcoming meetings. June 3rd, Congresswoman Fischbach is going to be here in our community space from 10 to 11 a.m. There's a opportunity to kind of find out what issues are important to us here in Clay County. And that's been posted. Again, a reminder, on June 11th, we're going to have awards. There's going to be an award ceremony at the Sheriff's Department for some of our deputies. Excuse me.
Steve, can you send us a follow-up on that, please?
Sure, will do.
Thank you.
On June 14th, as been mentioned, we have the county tour and road and bridge projects from 9 a.m. To 2 p.m. The 15th, we'll have a Board of Appeals and Equalization. Board meeting will be at 5:30. The Board of Appeals and Equalization will be at 6:30. And then again, today we'll have our manager's retreat at 11:30. And just would note, last Wednesday, we did receive our first half of our American Rescue Funds. So I would assume that our committee will be getting together soon to as we find out more information about what we're able to utilize those funds for. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Brian, anything? All right. Colleen, anything? Anybody else, any additions? We're all good? All right, I'm gonna go have my second surgery next week, so I will not be here. Thank you, Commissioner Mojo, for acting as chair in my absence, and I look forward to 2 weeks from now when I can see better. Yeah, be careful what you wish for, I guess. All right, very good. We are adjourned.